Welcome to Gifted Underachievers, the podcast for mid-level creatives with delusional ambitions. In this segment, Pat discusses her uber preparedness for tax season, which leads James to discuss how Pat is stressing him out because he is so uber unprepared. Nonetheless, Pat is a fountain of solid tax time information and advice. Good stuff. Please give a listen. And by the way, you'll find out why Pat is a badger that is best left alone.
James,
Oh, God, what?
guess what happens in Canada at the end of March?
End of March.
Or it might be end of April. I'm not sure. It's different for self-employed people.
Oh, so that's a hint.
Yeah.
Self-employed people, end of March, beginning of April, college basketball finals.
Yeah. No.
No. Then the only other thing it could be is tax time.
Yeah, tax preparation time.
Yes.
Oh, did you see that? The clouds opened and a lightning bolt came out.
Yeah. I could feel the IRS suddenly, leaning my direction.
Yeah, one big ear just peeped out and it opened up like a shell. It's going, well, I hear somebody saying
Here we
taxes.
go. We've got a self-employed person.
Yeah, and for me, it's Canada Revenue Agency, CRA, we call them. Used to be called Revenue Canada. I feel that they needed to change the name for some reason. I don't know. Like, why? Add an extra word? Agency?
Yeah.
Is that because we don't have any agency related to our
Maybe
taxes?
they wanted to spell something.
Crap. You're right. Never thought of that. Anyway, so just
All right.
just something that all self-employed people, including many creatives, do around this time of year is start realizing they hadn't kept their income and, expense spreadsheet up to date. They may not have their profit and loss statement if they're a LLC or whatever the hell the American version is, uh,
Yep.
of, a
So,
limit.
well, sorry to interrupt, but I've
No,
got
no.
filled with questions here.
Oh,
So
shoot.
do you feel like, because you work, you do work that's in the US and Canada, right?
Excuse me, let me correct you
Yes.
immediately. I do not work in the US.
No,
I
no.
have clients all over the world. I am domiciled and file taxes in Canada.
Okay, perfect. Now, how do you feel? Do you get really worried about taxes? Do you feel like the Canada Revenue Service or CAR, do you
Agency,
feel like they
CRA.
are constantly coming after you, or?
Crap. No, I don't now. Not anymore. I had to get over that feeling because I'm chump change in terms of relative earnings. The corporations with the big tax lawyers and, the numerous accountants, they're protected. The jobby job person who gets taxes taken off their paycheck, income tax removed from every paycheck, they're protected.
Mhm.
So as a sole proprietor who initially wasn't making much money in my editing business, but then of course my income went up every year, except for 2024, that bastard year.
Mm, yes.
And I learned how to set systems in place to protect myself from getting poked and prodded by CRA. So
Mhm.
I went through quite extensive process to get my services declared exempt from GST for people who live outside Canada.
Mhm.
So GST is our goods and services tax. If I want for a Canadian client, I charge it. I charge whatever the percentage of GST is. Sometimes it's high, like in Ontario, I think it's 12 or 15% of the total bill goes to taxes for a
Mhm.
client of mine. And whereas I am 0 rated for taxes outside of Canada. I don't charge the goods and services tax because it's for Canadian citizens and residents only.
Mhm.
But I had to go through a process to get that put in writing that I'm
Mhm.
exempt,
Mhm.
because if you don't go through that process and you're not charging your out of country clients that tax,
Mhm.
then the government can come after me in 10 years and say, oh, you should have been charging GST on all those invoices. You now owe us $1 billion. And so I didn't want to go through that later. So I said to myself, save future Pat the hassles, get it dealt with now. And I did that. So my kind of attitude toward taxes is get advice, figure out what you need to do. And I'm terrible at getting advice because I don't know who to ask, right? If I ask an accountant that charges, that does taxes, I'm like, well, yeah, they're going to tell me I need them because that's the service they provide.
Mhm.
You don't get sample edits from accountants who are going to say, you know what, you're fine, do your own taxes. You ask them, do I need somebody to do my taxes? They're like, well, yeah, of course you do. Uh, so anyway, I did use TurboTax for a few years, partly because I did hire an accountant one year and just did a comparison. I also got TurboTax, and then I got them to do um my taxes and I did my own taxes, and actually paid less tax using TurboTax because they were conservative. They were like, "Oh, well, um, I don't know why exactly." It was also I did the joint taxes with me and my husband, so it was different because his income counted too. So I can't really. It was
Yeah.
apples to apples that year, but it doesn't apply to me now because I don't have a joint income. Um, but now I realized that when I started doing stuff, teaching online, I was not comfortable enough with the rules around, okay, let's say somebody's in New Zealand and they take my course and they pay the school based in this country, and then that school pays me, and I claim that as income on my Canadian taxes. I don't want those other countries thinking, oh, yeah, they get to tax me on that because there's rules you can't tax twice. So there are tax treaties with certain countries where I'm exempt, but I didn't feel comfortable making those decisions, so I hired an accountant that specializes in cross-border, US, Canada, and different countries, tax so that they can just do my taxes for me. I keep all the income and, expense statements, the profit and loss for the year, all that stuff. I prepare those and I send them to them. And I have all the receipts and I keep everything, but they actually complete my tax return with the sole purpose of if anybody from CRA ever says to me, "We need to talk to you about your taxes," I can say, "Here's my representative's name. Talk
Mhm.
to them." I don't
Mhm.
ever have to talk to them because I have somebody else preparing my taxes.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's why. So I use TurboTax, and I'm married, and so it gets really complicated, and it's
Yeah.
even hard to figure out, specifically what I owe and specifically what she owes, just because the way TurboTax kind of you put
Yeah.
your info in first, and it goes bloop, here it is, and then she puts hers in, or I put mine in, and it goes bloop,
Yeah.
so it's a little bit difficult, but I always get, the audit protection. I get all of the stuff that they offer
Mm.
so that if I do get, that letter or whatever, um, that, I have somebody who I can say, okay, here's the person that you need to talk to. But I do
Yeah.
use TurboTax because I try to keep everything as simple as humanly possible.
Yeah.
And so most of the people, I don't work with a lot of people who are out of the US.
Yeah.
But when I do, with maybe one or two exceptions, it's a US based publisher or some other business
Mhm.
that is who I'm actually working for.
Yeah.
So even though the author or client is, based somewhere else like the UK or something, the person who's actually paying me is based in the US. So it's up to them to figure out, all that stuff,
Yeah,
right?
they have your invoice. So
Yeah.
so to get away from our personal situations around taxes, because I guess what the other part of the reason we're talking about taxes is that it's kind of it can be easy to ignore what you need to do
Mhm.
to figure out last year's income and expenses and figure out what you can deduct and do all the spreadsheet stuff you need to do. There are a lot of tools out there. Lots of independent or sole
Mhm.
proprietors hire bookkeepers. They're not
Mhm.
expensive. They'll do that for you.
Um, I would, in the US that, well, I would say it's been my experience that if I go to an accountant and say, how much would you charge?
Uh,
Or a bookkeeper, it's significantly more expensive.
Yeah, for here, it's I know enough self-employed people that I can say, "Who's your bookkeeper and what do they charge?" to my friends who have them, and
Mhm.
it'll be like 40 bucks an hour or something. It's still more expensive than me doing it myself, and I've never used a bookkeeper because my shit's all over the place. I gotta find it, you know? I'm like, "Well, by the time I've prepared it to send to them, I might as well just put it in the spreadsheet because that's only
Yeah.
another hour of my time." Might as
Well,
well do it, you know?
and it's one of those things where I think if you have more income or more profit on your income, then I think that would be something that I would love to do
Mhm.
because
Yeah,
it's one of those headaches, right?
yeah,
It's not
yeah,
so much that I'm worried about that I'm doing it wrong because
yeah,
I'm such a, scaredy cat of the IRS that I do my best to make sure I'm doing it right.
yeah,
But it's one of those extra duties that you as a self-employed person have to figure out.
yeah.
Wouldn't it be so nice if you could outsource that to somebody else?
Yeah. And you can. I think if you're organized enough, you can definitely do it without having to pay a bunch of money. It might cost you like 200 bucks. That's chump change in the
Yeah.
scheme of
Well, I
things.
mean, in terms of so the people who I know who are self-employed who I've asked,
Yeah.
like how much do you pay? It's anywhere from like $600 to $800 and up.
A month?
No, for if just to do the taxes, right?
Well,
Just to do
dude, yeah, see, bookkeepers don't do taxes here. Accountants do taxes here.
yeah, well, a lot of people do both, accounting.
Okay.
And so, but yeah, I mean, but $200 a month, right? For bookkeeping services. Boy, there's a lot of places that money could go. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm not talking about a month. I'm talking about because I don't get I paid the tax person I use, I think it's like 750 once a
mhm,
year to do my taxes. And I feel like if I got my shit together and I was organized enough, I could pay a bookkeeper to do the ongoing input of my
mhm,
because I for a while there I was inputting uh I mean by while I mean a couple of years. I was inputting I would just have half a day every 2 weeks where I would just catch up on my accounting input, but then I realized I hate it. I just don't like it. So I'd rather hold my nose for 3 days in February and do all that shit and get my spreadsheets in to the, accountant to file my taxes by mid-Feb. It's never
mhm,
mid-Feb. Sometimes it's fucking I don't know, it's like it's around the end of March. But then I have time to figure out because I charge GST to Canadians and I also pay GST, so there's this calculation you
uh,
gotta there's a difference and then you either get it or you pay it, and, it's always minor, but, yeah, there's just all this stuff I think is handy if you know how to do it, it's a skill, right? If you don't know how to do it and you want somebody else to do it, you kinda gotta know what you want them to do and the difference
mhm,
between what would do you a lot of good and what would help you navigate if you did ever get audited,
mhm,
what that could look like. I got asked to go into an office in Sinclair Center in downtown Vancouver where the CRA lives,
mhm,
um, for this region and spent 2.5 hours with an agent who this was when I was making so little money that I was like, "Seriously, I wonder how much they're paying this person to go in and hassle somebody who's making like 30 grand a year." Um,
mhm,
but they did it, and so I went in and I had all my shit so anally organized because that was the period where I was doing it, um, consistently and really, trying to go, "Okay, well, my business is new. I better have my shit together." And, it was such a waste of time, her time and my time. We talked she wanted to write poetry, so we talked about poetry a little while, and then she told me that I should be calculating exchange rates more often, and I was like, "Oh, good. How often should I do it?" And, because I do it when I get the money in, and that's it. I don't
mhm,
calculate it the day they send the money. Anyway, she's like, "Oh, there's no rule." But when I worked for a very big organization, I did it, twice a day. And I'm
mhm.
like, "Well, I don't get paid twice a day." So, like a big
Yeah,
organization has money coming in all the time. Of
yeah,
course, they're gonna do it more often. It's 10,000, 20,000, $30,000 worth of
yeah.
stuff. But, um, in a day or two, or more often. Anyway, so I was like, there's no rule, but you want me to do it more often? So how often? And we circled around that topic for a good 5 minutes. I wasn't going to let go, and she wasn't going to give me an answer. So anyway, we went through everything. She's like, "Do you have an inventory?" I'm like, "No, I'm an editor." She didn't know how books
Yeah.
worked. She didn't know that the editor doesn't sell books out of their tiny little closet,
Right,
so
right.
there was all of this me educating her on the publishing industry and freelance editorial work, and then there was this sort of, "Okay, goodbye, good luck with the poetry." She was heading out for 2 months of stress leave. Um,
That says something, right?
stress leave. I'm doing air quotes, and,
Yeah.
it would just b she was gonna take it, at home in Malaysia or somewhere, wherever she was from, because the weather was really good there at that time of year, and, she just needed to chill, and so so we had this awkward silent ride down in the elevator, and then I'm like, "Okay, cheers, thanks a lot," and then I sent the three-page memo, afterwards confirming everything she told me,
Uh-huh.
and, saying, my understanding is just this thing that irked me was she said, "You should do this part more often," but wouldn't give me a more often, and so I just said, "And my understanding is that there is no that I should be, that there is no, rule about how often this should be done, so I'm gonna keep doing it on the schedule I'm already doing it on. If that's a problem, let me know within 5 business days in writing, and I will do it whatever way you want me to do it." And of course, they never respond in writing because they don't want it on record. If an agent makes a mistake
Mhm.
verbally, that can't happen. So they'll never give you anything in writing. It's only this big manual they refer to that's online. And
Yeah.
she never referred me to the manual. She never responded to the memo. I'm like, it's in my file. They're not going to fuck with me because I'm too big of a pain in the ass.
So
Which,
that
yeah.
that's that's
Richard.
the, takeaway.
Yeah.
That's too big of a pain in the ass to fuck with, so
And you'll never get enough money because I'm not a big player. So, and Richard, my
yeah.
husband, at the time I said I was going in for this meeting, and he was like, "Oh man, pity the fool who fucks with you on on paperwork," because he knows how anal I am. He just laughed because he knew I
That's
would
really good.
never get in trouble.
I know, and it's funny when we talk about this stuff, whether it's, the podcast or just the 2 of us, shooting the breeze.
Yeah.
I always walk away feeling really anxious. Yeah, you are so together. I'm like, "Oh my god," I'm like, I don't even know, what the comparison would be.
I'm like a badger. It's like or an otter, a river otter. You know,
There you
you just stay away from them. Let them have their space. And so my anality around paperwork and being willing to go, "Fuck you, I'm coming down." You wanna get
you're
into it? We'll get into it.
like honey badger, Fisher cat, Wolverine, sort of,
I
you
get
know,
this so
who's
I
really
really
good,
honest
who's really solid on paperwork,
Yeah,
right?
I'm very solid on paperwork, and so I
Like,
think if Revenue Canada ever takes a look at my record, or what do they call it? Canada Revenue Agency, I should
crop.
have comma, perhaps, in their title.
Yeah.
If they ever look at my file, they'll go, "You know what? She doesn't make enough money for us to go after her, even if this one detail is wrong, because she's gonna have backup, and she's
Right.
gonna make somebody's life miserable if they if they have an empty afternoon and they need to go hassle somebody, it's not gonna be her. Let's pick somebody less
Yeah.
organized." Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and would like to have the perspective of logic, right? That
You're logical.
no, not me being logical, but that whoever
Oh,
I'm dealing with is gonna operate with a
yeah,
grounded logic, right?
yeah,
So, I don't make tons of money.
yeah,
There's not lots and lots of money coming in. My tax bill, my income is generally, mid-income-ish.
yeah.
You My tax bill is what it is, and I try to pay a little bit more just because I feel like, if I ever do get hauled in and they say, "No, you can't deduct this,"
Mhm.
then I'm gonna have some, margin for error,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So they got your money.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and so I'd like to feel though that there's a certain logic that, if you do get called in for whatever the reason that um you're gonna have more of just a conversation as opposed to like, if you're some huge company and you've been, putting revenue in the Barbados and, all this kind of stuff, like I'm not that. I'm just trying to
Mhm.
be straightforward. And so for me, it's all about, can I document it,
Yeah.
right? Do I have either the receipt, or I have, the bank statements,
Yeah.
or I have, if I like to pay through PayPal for stuff because
Mhm.
it's protected. And you get two receipts from that. You get a PayPal receipt and then usually a receipt from whoever you're paying. So
Yeah.
I make sure I hang on to that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, no, I'm not like the honey badger, like,
Well, the
I've
honey maybe honey, I don't know. I think you attached honey to the badger name.
no, well,
I'm a
there's
badger.
this,
There's no
well, I'm
honey.
gonna, there's this YouTube or Instagram meme of the honey badger that is, I
Oh,
haven't seen it, you got to check it out. It's pretty
okay, I
fun,
will. I'll look for it. Yeah.
but because they're badass, they're totally. And so for me, like, how I feel calm about it and okay about it is making sure I have everything documented, and making sure that I'm not trying, like, when I come to it, I even work on making sure I have a mindset where I'm like, okay, be scrupulously honest, like, don't try and go, cheap or whatever.
Yeah,
So
err on the side of caution. That's my
yeah.
thing.
But I
Anything.
still get stressed out. And it'd be great to have that income where you could outsource it. And then that frees up a lot of other time too, right?
Your
So there's,
mental bandwidth, yeah.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and just time bandwidth,
Yeah.
because you do have to spend whatever it is each month just to make sure you have all the documents. You've got, you know, um, credit card statements,
Mhm.
yada yada yada, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you don't have to do that because you've given access, or however, you're working it with a bookkeeper,
Yeah.
that would be awesome.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, good luck everybody and don't delay. Don't wait till the last second. You don't want to pay penalties. And in Canada, if you don't file your taxes on time and you owe them money, the penalties can be pretty steep.
Yeah.
So
Well,
don't
you always
wait.
do. If you
Yeah.
screw it up, the penalties can be pretty steep. If you are late, it can be steep. So
Yeah.
yeah.
If it gives you the heebie-jeebies, you know what would be a great idea? To have an online co-working group, silent co-working tax group, and we could all just
Yeah.
cry as we do our numbers.
And bitch and moan and all the
Yeah.
rest. Yeah. Well, and it's one of the reasons I like TurboTax is because there's a lot of resources to
Yeah.
fact check, look into things.
Yeah.
And they've been very good. I hate to be like boosting and, whatever it is, a
Yeah.
company, but they've done, there's been times where I've had to call somebody and they've been pretty good.
Yeah. I did TurboTax, and I did really like them, and we have no shares, by the way. TurboTax,
Yeah. And no advertisers. So, we're not trying to make somebody happy.
Yeah, and the last one we'd pick is a tax company, for God's
Oh,
sake.
God. Yeah.
Tax software. But anyway, they have been helpful in the past, and I did pay the extra a couple of times for the person to, if you have a question, to walk you through it. And sometimes it's just that I don't understand the terminology. I don't know what they're asking for, and I can't put it in there because I don't know what they mean, in the form, and then picking up the phone and going, what do they mean by that?
Right.
And she'll just put it into English,
Yeah. 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 Normal people speak.
Well.
Great. Good luck,
Okay.
people.
Yeah, good luck.
Thanks for listening to Gifted Underachievers, the podcast for mid-level creatives with delusional ambitions. At this point, we should probably note that neither James nor Pat are accountants, bookkeepers, tax preparers, or in any way should be giving out professional tax advice. We're just talking about our experience, willing to share it, and hope it benefits you. Nonetheless, we'd love to hear how we're doing, so please leave a comment, join our chat page, or send us an email at giftedunderachievers@substack.com. You can also find us on Spotify, iTunes, and anywhere else where you like to get your podcasts. Thank you, and have an awesome day.